I did do this a couple of months back before the transfer window even opened, but now I'm coming back to you with my final Premier League predictions. We are going to crack on with this right away then, and at number 20, getting relegated bottom of the table, I have gone with Leicester City. Now, Enzo Maresca has obviously left, so they have had to appoint a new manager, Steve Cooper, a manager that I really like, a manager that's done well in the Premier League, but ultimately a new manager always brings around a lot of change. They've also lost Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, who is a fantastic player and will be a massive loss for them. I don't think they've replaced him particularly well. 4 players through the door, one of which is Fatawu, who was particularly good for them in the Championship last year. I think that's a really good signing, but the other 3 signings that they've made haven't blown me away. I don't think they've massively improved on last season at all, and I think that they'll struggle to stay up. 19th, I've gone for Nottingham Forest. 17th place last season, hanging on by a thread. This year it's been another summer transfer window with a chaotic turnover of players, 7 new players in, 10 players out, a number of loans coming to an end. I just think it looks a little bit all over the place. It is, however, Nuno Espirito's first full season in charge, so we'll wait and see how he gets on there. It could all change, but at the minute I do have Nottingham Forest going down. 18th and taking the final relegation spot, I have gone with Southampton. Now, this one does feel a little bit harsh because I do rate some of their transfer business. They've brought in the loans that were successful for them in the Championship last season. Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Flynn Downs, 2 really good signings there. But their squad is largely the same as it was last season. And last season, they did have times in the Championship where they were very inconsistent. If they are to stay up, that is going to need to improve. But right now, I just don't think they have the quality over some of the teams in and around them to be able to stay up. 17th, and I've gone with Brentford. Now, very little action to report from them in the transfer window. A couple of acquisitions in the form of Igor Thiago and Julian Eystone. But ultimately, I don't think that they've made enough signings to be able to push on this season. At the same time, they've already got quality in their team in names like Ivan Toney, who it's been really good that they've been able to keep hold of him. Brian Mbeumo is always going to get you goals. So they have got enough to stay up, but it's not going to be a very thrilling season for the Bees, I don't think. 16th, and I've gone for my club, Ipswich Town, and I did not particularly like putting us this low down on the list. And had we done this video a couple of weeks ago, I'd have probably had us a bit higher, because at the time, I was very satisfied with our transfer business. Now, with George Hurst and Nathan Broadhead seemingly going injured, it does seem like we are looking a little bit light in attack. That said, we did overperform in the Championship with what many people called a League One squad at the time. So why can't we do it again? We've got a really young and upcoming manager who's really impressive. He's helped this squad bridge the gap from League One to the Championship. I have full confidence in him to be able to help them bridge the gap from the Championship to the Premier League. So regardless of who's in the building, and I do expect us to get a couple of more players anyway, I do think that Town are going to have enough to stay up relatively comfortably. 15th, I've gone for Wolves. They've got a pretty steady squad. They've got a steady manager in Gary O'Neill. Solid team, no thrills and spills, and a comfortable 15th place finish. 14th, and I've gone for Brighton. And of course, they have had a remarkable couple of seasons. Their club has gone under a lot of growth, both financially, probably commercially, and that has reflected in their performances on the pitch and their league finish. However, I don't think that this transfer window has been particularly great for them, if I'm being completely honest. Pascal Gross is a huge loss for them. Obviously, he's gone to Borussia Dortmund, and I just don't think that they've recruited as well as the other teams in and around them, who I do think have now gone slightly ahead of them. 13th, and I have gone with Fulham. Now, obviously, they got big money for Tosin Adarabioyo, who went to Chelsea. They've reinvested that by signing Emile Smith-Rowe, which I think is a terrific signing. They've brought back Ryan Sessegnon on a free transfer, which is a little bit of a risk. But at the end of the day, if they can get him back fit, we all know that he's a very good player. And that mixed with the fact that they do just have a lot of great depth in their attack, whether it be Alex Iwobi, Raul Jimenez, Muniz, Adama Traore. They can pretty much chop and change their attack and it still looks pretty frightening. I think that they're a club that are on the up. I think they've got a very solid squad, and I think 13th would definitely be a good finish and their fans would be very happy with it. 12th, and I'm going with Bournemouth. Now, I really liked watching Bournemouth last year. I thought they're very impressive. They're a club that lots of people always underestimate. Usually when these sort of videos are being done, they're put towards the bottom of the table. But they massively upset the odds last year, I think. A 12th place finish for them last campaign. It's what I expect them to do again this season. It is indeed Andoni Iraola's second season in charge, so maybe he'll really want to try and push on now. Everybody has that embedding process when they first go into a club. He's managed the first full season, which in today's game is a very difficult thing to do. He's taken them through a second pre-season, and I think that they'll pick up where they left off. If not, go on to surprise people and finish even higher. But at the minute, I've got them finishing 12th. 11th, I am going with Everton. Now, as he always does, Sean Dyche has gone into a club and he's steadied the ship. They had a couple of difficult seasons, it's fair to say, but Dyche has done a good job. He's got them playing decent enough football. As you know, it's not going to be too exciting, but it is going to be effective and it is going to get them results. I think one big advantage, although some people may see it as quite a sad thing, I'm sure many Everton fans do, but also exciting, is the fact that this is their last season at Goodison Park. Now, strange things happen in football and mentality is a huge thing in the game. They're going to raise their levels because they've got to go out on a bang. They've got to have a brilliant season at Goodison Park. Now, is 11th a particularly good season? Probably not, but it is vastly better than what they've seen over the last couple of years. So I think Everton fans would be very happy with that finish, and I do expect that they'll be able to push on and get it. I think a lot of people do have them tipped for relegation still, but I think they picked up form towards the end of last season, and I think Dyche will have a very steady Everton side to display. 10th, and I'm going with Crystal Palace. So, of course, here we are now moving into the top half of the table. And Crystal Palace last year were very, very impressive. They had a dynamite attack with Michael Elise, Abire Eze and Mateta towards the end of the season. Oliver Glasner done a terrific job when he came in halfway through the campaign, and he's now had a full pre-season to work with those players. Of course, not Elise because he's joined Bayern Munich, but I still think it's very effective. Get to know those players even more, get them to know your system even more, and it was obviously a system that worked because they did pick up massively. I think that it's a really exciting time for Crystal Palace fans. However, I do think that they're not going to push on quite as much as they could have done because I don't think that they've reinvested the money that they got for Elise particularly well. Ismail Assar is a really good winger, but can he come in and fill the Elise-shaped void? I'm not sure he can. I don't think he's quite to that level, albeit a very good player nonetheless. I do think Crystal Palace are a good side, and to be honest, if this prediction is wrong, I do expect it to be wrong in the sense that they've ended up finishing higher. 9th, and I've gone for Manchester United. Now, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this in the comments. People will tell me off, but I don't see where they've improved. Now, I was under the impression, and I think many football fans were as well, from what the media has sort of said, that this was going to be a massive summer of change for Manchester United. And I just haven't seen it, to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of outgoings, Donny van der Beek, Rafael Varane, obviously Anthony Martial as well. They have brought in a couple of players. They've brought in Euro and Zerki, two fantastic players, but Euro is out for the first couple of months of the season. That's not their fault, but it is a massive blow. Two players, to me, coming into the club does not suggest that that is a massive season of change. Of course, FA Cup winners last season, I'll give them that, but their league form really wasn't all that impressive, and I don't think that they've done much to convince me that they're going to improve at all this season. As I say, it was supposed to be a summer of change at Old Trafford, but to me it looks more like it's going to be a season of stagnation for the Red Devils. 8th, and I've gone for Tottenham Hotspur. Now, they've had a little bit of a clear out. The likes of Ivan Perisic and Tanguy and Ndombele, who were on big contracts but ultimately not playing much, have now left the club. They have got rid of a lot of dead wood. It's another pre-season under Ange Postecoglou, but again, I just don't think they've done enough to take them that massive step forward. I do think across the next few years we'll really start to see Tottenham grow. You can see with the players that they're bringing in that they are trying to build for the future. Of course, Archie Gray from Leeds is a terrific signing, but is he ready to be the player that is going to take them from being in the top half of the table to getting back to where they're challenging for top four and possibly even the league again? I don't think quite yet. That's not to say that he won't be in time, and it's not to say that Tottenham won't be challenging for that sort of position in time. I just think they're a little bit off of it as yet. I don't think they should have sold Højbjerg because I think he's a really good player. But ultimately, Tottenham, I've got finishing 8th. But I do think that across the next couple of seasons, we will really start to see them push on. 7th, and I've gone for Newcastle United. Now, I do think that Eddie Howe has to hit the ground running this season. Obviously, the season before last, they ended up qualifying for the Champions League, which was a monumental victory for the club in many ways. Last year, they ended up finishing 7th, which means there is no European football this year. With the money that they've invested to the team, the money that everybody knows Newcastle have, really they've got to be a team that is starting to challenge consistently to get into the top 4, if not Europa League football at the very least. Asula is a very good signing from Sheffield United, but again, have they got anyone that has massively improved their starting 11? I just don't think so, and I think other teams around them have strengthened more than they have, and that is ultimately going to hold them back a little bit. 6th, and I've gone for Chelsea. Now, they did finish last season particularly well, but of course that does not matter now because they've got a new manager in Enzo Maresca, who they took off Leicester, of course, and with him they have brought Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Now, results have been a little bit mixed in pre-season. They haven't been particularly great, if I'm being honest. There's been lots of social media trolling, I guess you could call it. Lots of people saying that Chelsea are going to be really bad this season. Ultimately, I don't read too much into pre-season. I think Chelsea have got a young and hungry squad. They're all going to be another year or so into their development. I think that they will be good under Maresca. Maresca has obviously learnt from Pep. He proved last year that he's a good manager in the Championship. Perhaps he's exactly what those players needed. Somebody new, somebody coming into the Premier League with fresh ideas to help them grow. It could really be what Chelsea have needed for a long time. Conor Gallagher is Atletico Madrid bound, but as I said, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall has signed, and I think that he has very similar attributes to Gallagher. I'm not saying he's quite the same player yet, but I don't think there's any reason why he can't develop to fill that role that Conor Gallagher is going to leave behind. Like Tottenham, I think Chelsea are a work in progress, and I think they'll be happy with a 6th place finish this year. 5th, and I've gone with West Ham United. Now, do believe me when I say I did not like putting them this high up on the list, but ultimately you can't deny the summer transfer window that they've had. Again, if we had done this video a couple of weeks ago, probably wouldn't have had them finishing this high. But all of a sudden, Crescencio Somerville and Fulkrug come through the door and they suddenly have one of the best attacks in the division. I think it's really good business to get those players in. Rodriguez has joined as well. Suddenly, West Ham's squad depth looks really good. Obviously, the likes of Jared Bowen in there as well, still fighting for his place. And it just looks a really dangerous attack in particular. Lopetegui has impressed whilst addressing the fans. They seem to be quite happy with what he's done so far, albeit hard to judge because they've not played a competitive game. But I do think that they have all the ingredients to be able to push on this year. It's a very exciting time for the Hammers. 4th place, and I am going to go with Arsenal. Now, if you watched me do this video a couple of months back, then you would have seen that I had Arsenal to win the whole thing. Well, that's changed now because I don't think that they've had a particularly good summer transfer window. Their squad has stayed the same, pretty much. A couple of additions, but nothing major, I don't think. No big players going out. And I think that does help in a lot of way because, you know, consistency is key. But ultimately, they haven't strengthened and their squad wasn't good enough to take on Manchester City last year. They didn't end up winning the league. So why now, when they haven't improved, should they expect to be able to go and do what they wasn't able to do last season? I just don't think it's going to happen. That said, lots of quality in that Arsenal squad, of course. Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, name them, they've got them. The players are very impressive. They will be a title contender. I think it's going to be a really good race for the title this year, but ultimately I do have Arsenal dropping down to 4th. Still qualifying for the Champions League though. 3rd place, and I'm going for Aston Villa. Now, these are going to have a really good season anyway, regardless of what happens in the league, because they are back in the Champions League. Now, that's very exciting for the club, but we do know it brings challenges trying to balance European football with league football. I think this is where Aston Villa have done particularly well this window. They have sold the likes of Douglas Luiz. Diaby has, of course, also moved on, which is a massive loss, but I think what's really smart is that they haven't splashed the cash on trying to replace both of those people, but instead spread their wealth to try and make the squad better and have more depth in all the different areas. So Ross Barkley, Illing Jr. coming in. They haven't gone and signed big names, but they've just made sure that they do have players of quality that are able to step in when injuries happen or when there's going to need to be more rotation to balance with the different competitions. It's very smart business. Unai Emery, of course, is a very good manager. I think he's criminally underrated. He's worked wonders at Villa Park already to get them back in the Champions League, and I think they're just going to go from strength to strength under him. Second, and I'm going to go with Liverpool. Now, this was always going to be an interesting one. Post-Jurgen Klopp, Arne Slot obviously in his place, but by all accounts, they've been very impressive in pre-season. They have already beaten Manchester United in pre-season. Salah looks revitalised, and perhaps, although it maybe didn't seem like it at the time, Liverpool needed something to change at the club, because last season ultimately wasn't great for them. Now, you could argue the toss over why that was. Was it the fact that players were a little bit uncomfortable not knowing who was going to be in charge at the end of the season? Was it just a bit of an uncertain time for everyone at Liverpool? Now, they know who they're playing under, they know who they've got to impress, and some of the big players look like they're going to try and get back to their best. Van Dijk, Salah, of course, Darwin Núñez. Liverpool, we know, have a very, very good squad, and I do think that this is the season where they're going to get back to challenging right at the very top end of the table. But I don't think it's going to be quite enough to catch number one in the table, and retaining their title will be Manchester City. Now, when I've done this video before, we didn't know if they were going to be getting a points deduction or not. They still might, we don't know. But at the time of the recording, they're not. So I do think Manchester City will win the league again. Boring, I know. I don't think I need to explain too much why. Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne, best squad in the world. And ultimately, I do just think there's no one quite ready to catch them. Manchester City, for me, will retain the Premier League title. Of course, different to what I predicted a couple of months back, but I did always say we were going to do this video again after the transfer window has happened, and I don't think anybody has strengthened enough just to be able to catch Manchester City. So there you have it then. Those are my final Premier League predictions. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Do you agree with them? If not, then why? And how excited are you for the new Premier League season? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.